Hello, everyone, and we welcome you to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bubb. We do apologize again for the late start. We're having some internet challenges here, but if you notice that the stream is a bit spotty, it has nothing to do with your end of things. It's just our end of things with the quality of the internet here, which we will attempt to resolve as we get the program going. Now, as the general election draws near in Grenada, the Bubb Report reiterated its commitment to serve as a responsible new media partner of the burgeoning democratic process, which continues to evolve in the young nation of Grenada. Over the last few months, the question of who is or who is not eligible to vote has become part of the national zeitgeist, without sometimes much weight being given to the representation of the People's Act. Now, today on the Bubb Report, we will examine key elements of the RPA in respect of understanding who is qualified to vote in the context of the entrenched constitutional provision in Section 32. The amendments made to the RPA in 2018 by the then new National Party administration identifies a Grenadian citizen separate and distinct and makes separate accommodation for the Grenadian citizen. Now, some have argued that this provision is not consistent with the provisions of Section 232 of the Constitution and Section 106. Now, on this week's edition of the program, we will examine the RPA, which facilitates voting in Grenada. We will first be joined by the Supervisor of Elections and later by Dr. Francis Alexis and Dave Ned to continue this conversation. And we're now happy to be joined by Mr. Arthur Pear, Grenada's Supervisor of Election. Mr. Pear, welcome, sir, to this week's edition of the Bubb Report.
Good morning, Dr. Bob, and thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yes, sir. And we want to respect your time because I know you don't have a lot of time. You do have another engagement at 11, so we want to get right into it. Now, Mr. Pear, can you talk about the current voter registration role and the steps that are usually taken by the PO to sanitize the voter registration list?
Okay. Currently, as of December 2025, we had 90,902 legitimately registered individuals. As of January to June 2026, we had 2,659 persons registering. So the list as of the 30th of June of this year, we have a total of 93,561 legitimately registered individuals. Okay. Of course, the police list is separate and apart, and the police voters are currently 916, and that will be a decrease from 2025. So basically, that's the figures that we have as it relates to the number of persons on the list. Now,
okay,
as it relates to, sorry,
yes.
Go ahead.
So as it relates to the sanitization, could you talk about the process involved there?
Right. We are constantly reviewing the list as dictated by the legislation. So, for example, we publish the consolidated list twice per year. That is at the end of June, okay, or 15th of July, and at the end of December, okay, and you would get that list on the 15th of January. Now, what we do, we look for persons who, first and foremost, might have died. And to be able to verify that, we get a list from the Ministry of Health, Births and Deaths Department from the Ministry of Health, and we look at the list of persons who would have died during the course of the year, and through that verification process, we are able to eliminate or to remove dead persons from the list. Now, mind you, let me say that there will always be deaths on the list because people die every day, okay? So there will always be somebody who would have died whose name may appear on the list.
Mm-hmm.
One of the problems that we have, one of the challenges that we have, is persons whose name are on the list and who might be living, studying, working outside of the country. Okay. Now, if persons, when we publish the consolidated list and persons are able to see that, we are saying, come forward, okay? Ensure that you examine the list, come forward, tell us, look, this person died, and give us the evidence, so a death certificate, so that we can make the verification, and that person certainly would be removed from the list. Right?
Now, yes, go ahead, please. Yes.
Right. So, and we do that. Now, this year, what we did, because we have had objections, right, of persons who are on the list, what we would have done is go back about 10 years prior to this year, go back about 10 years, and we did find just a few persons whose name actually might have accidentally remained on the list, and we were able to remove them.
Very, very well. So you're saying that is a consistent process there. Now,
Yes.
let us talk about the enumeration process. Meaning, I suppose when we say enumeration here, again, in layman's terms here, we are referencing, I suppose, just a re-registration process. Is that, would that be a correct way of?
No, there's a difference between registration and enumeration. Enumeration,
okay. Please explain that difference for us.
The process of enumeration actually takes place at a significant period of time. Okay, so persons, what happens in enumeration is that we send persons out in the field, visit house to house to account for individuals who are eligible to be on the list. All right, so that is the enumeration process. Now, when we do enumeration, that basically helps in sanitizing the list. It helps in sanitizing the list. That basically gives a very true reflection of persons that are present, okay, that are alive, and that are eligible, as well as the fact that it gives us the location of the persons, that they are residing in Grenada. Okay. So that basically eliminates a lot of things. However, we do continuous registration. So the registration process is continuous. So during the course, until a writ is written by the Governor General, during the course of operations of the Parliamentary Elections Office, persons can get registered through the various constituency offices. All right, the parliamentary constituency offices that are found in the constituencies.
So in the context of the Constitution, or in terms of the, as I understood it prior, there are particular triggers that would inform an enumeration process. Is that no longer the case? I believe, for example, if you have a new computer system, may trigger an enumeration process. So can you talk about what is it, only that element, or what other elements inform why an enumeration should occur?
Well, as far as I am concerned, all right, I'm certainly not exhausted the research as it relates to that.
Yes.
But a new voter registration system will trigger an enumeration process. All right, it will trigger an enumeration process. Okay. So the truth is that we are in the process of procuring, and we are in the last stages of doing so, procuring a new voter registration system. So when that is installed and it comes on stream, one of the things that we will have to do is to look at the issue of enumeration, actually going out, getting persons, knowing exactly where they're staying, etc., and getting them registered.
You just referenced the new system here. You're in the process of procuring that new system.
Yes.
Can you speak as to why the rationale behind having that new system, and also in the context of the new system, what it will be doing, and who are the people, or who would be responsible? In other words, who have you procured to have
Okay.
that new system in place?
All right. I wouldn't want to, and I'll deal with the last one first. I wouldn't want to say the person that we have procured as yet. All right. So please bear with me. However, um, the new system would function basically just as the old system functioned, with all the verification requirements, all the biometric requirements, and we may even add more features. The system would be able to produce a voter ID card, okay, with all the necessary security features, okay. And basically that is how it would function. All right. We, of course, this system, you would find computers and systems throughout the length and breadth of Grenada, Carriacou, Petit Martinique in the various constituencies. So persons would be able to go there, give their documentation, and get duly registered as dictated by the law. So the system must follow the dictates of the law. Okay, and that is basically what the new system will do. It will function just as the old system, but with additional features, additional security features, etc.
But again, what has prompted the PO to?
Oh yes,
yes,
my
yes.
apologies.
That was that you missed that one. Yes.
Right. Now the system that we have is I wouldn't say outdated, but it's old. And the place that we bought the system from, the company or the vendor that we got that system from, is no longer in business. So there are some support mechanisms that we would need to ensure that this system runs. And we don't have that. We don't necessarily have that support to upkeep the system. So the system, really and truly, for want of a better word, is not functioning. Well, it's functioning, but it is old. It is old.
Can we, however, talk about the procurement process that goes into identifying potential vendors,
right,
who would propose and bid for that system?
Okay, so there is a procurement law, all right, and if you are going to have taxpayers really and truly spend a lot of money on a computer system, we go through the legal channels to ensure that the system that we get is the best system, and we would have done so fairly, all right, and openly, transparently. Okay, so we went through a bidding process, all right, so we sent out requests for bids, all right. There have been a number of bids, and after that, when we have closed bids, and we now have to evaluate the bids. So there was an evaluation committee formed with a number of stakeholders. Okay, they would have gone through each of the bids that we would have received, and they would evaluate and score, and the winning bid would have the highest score, which would basically say that they have satisfied the requirements that we would have outlined, all right, because we wrote a very comprehensive TOR, okay, terms of reference for the bidders or the vendors, and as long as they have satisfied it, we are able now we have chosen somebody, and of course we have to go through the process of the contract and all the things that are needed to ensure that this particular bid is the one that we want.
Who sat, and sorry if I'm belaboring the point here on this new system, who informed that committee, or the people on that committee? And I suppose, of course, the Parliamentary Elections Office, they have to maintain every semblance of independence and neutrality.
Yes,
so in the process of articulating the people who sat on that committee, what safeguards are put in place to ensure that the people who are evaluating those bids are as neutral as possible.
Right. Now, we had, and let me just indicate the persons that were there. We had our own IT manager. Okay.
Yes.
Of course, he knowing the things that are required for the system. We had a lawyer. We had somebody from the FIU, okay, and we had somebody from the ICT department in Grenada. Those are the persons that would have reviewed the evaluation of the process.
Mm-hmm. So, do we know what the timeline is? Because you said that in the initial company, you said they folded.
Yes,
is that
folded.
what it is?
Yes,
right.
They
So
went belly up.
Okay. So the follow-up question is, where are we now with respect to this? I suppose this second round of procurement.
Okay. So we are at the final stage. Okay. So we have chosen a vendor. Okay, and it is now.
And who is that vendor?
I don't want to mention the vendor right now, please. I prefer not to mention that now because we are still in the process. Okay.
We're still in the process. But an announcement will be forthcoming.
Yes,
from
of course, of course. Mm-hmm. And the writing the contract, okay, is currently at the office of the Attorney General, just for review and for examination to ensure that we have all our I's dotted and our T's crossed.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, very well. Okay, now let us go on to talk about, and we do want to bring in Dr. Francis Alexis shortly as part of this conversation. But in respect of oversight of the Parliamentary Elections Office, mm-hmm. What does the RPA say with respect to the oversight your oversight obligations to the Parliament of Grenada? What does the RPA say about that? And can you speak to the reporting? So, for example, if I want to go to Parliament and examine any of the state documents now, whether it's by way of financial reports from any of the statutory bodies, I can do that because by law, although a lot of them have not been submitting reports realistically, but they are obligated to submit those reports to Parliament. So let us talk about the PO's reporting requirements for the supervisor of election and what have you reported to Parliament recently?
No, okay. So as it relates to reporting, I am not going to look at the RPA, but I'm looking at the Constitution. Right? It's a Constitution that basically would indicate the powers that the supervisor of election has. Of course, other mentions would be made in the RPA. Okay. However, in section 35.5 of the Constitution of Grenada, it basically says the supervisor of elections may, whenever he considers it necessary or expedient to do so, report to the House of Representatives on the exercise of his functions under the foregoing provisions of this section. He shall submit every such report to the minister for the time being responsible for matters relating to the elections of members of the House of Representatives, and that minister shall not later than 7 days after the House first meets, after he has received the report, late before the House. I have not laid any information before the House of the Parliament as yet, House of Parliament as yet. Mm-hmm. Okay, and of course I do have the leeway, all right, to do so when I deem that is fit to so do.
So is it? I'm trying to so it's based on what you just articulated here. That is discretionary.
Yes.
I have a difficulty with that personally. I mean, again, that's not for you, and I'll bring in Dr. Alexis here shortly.
Right.
And perhaps Dr. Alexis can articulate again his interpretation of it. But from what I hear you saying here, there is not a strict So shall we say, at the end of every accounting year, companies are expected to submit their budgets, right, to their shareholders. But in this case, that there is not even an annual reporting requirement here, based on what you just articulated.
Yes, and that is my interpretation as well.
Right, which is very interesting. So how are you as the Parliamentary Elections Office now holding yourself to task for making those reports available to the Parliament, and also in the context of those reports? That's a two-part question. What exactly are you obligated to report, or is it the voter registration list? Is it issues around the budget of the PO? Is it issues related to the computer system? What exactly are you reporting?
Right. So when I do report, all of those bits and pieces, which of course the general public needs to know, government needs to know, those bits and pieces certainly will be reported when that has to happen, when that will happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. I'm learning a lot today, because this we do have to have a follow-up conversation with you.
Of course.
Full disclosure, we have been trying to get you here for a long time, but scheduling issues prevented you from doing so, which is why we're having you on early, on the program today, because you do have to leave at 11. Yes. And this is why I want to bring in Dr. Francis Alexis. If Dr. Francis Alexis can go ahead and turn his camera on. It looks like my internet, I'm feeling much better now. My internet seems to have stabilized a bit. So Dr. Alexis, if we can turn your camera on, sir, for this portion of the conversation. Welcome, Dr. Alexis, to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. I hope, sir, if you can just adjust your camera a bit, because we're only seeing one side of your face.
That's a good side.
That's a good side. Welcome to this week's edition of the program, Dr. Alexis. I just wanted.
The pleasure is mine, Dr. Bubb, to be here.
Yes, absolutely. I was
listening to the supervisor of elections.
Yes, sir.
Interesting, yes.
Yes, absolutely. But Dr. Alexis, I want to pick up on, before we get to the issue of the residency requirement versus definitions of what is a Commonwealth citizen versus a Grenadian citizen, etc., etc. In respect of what the supervisor of election just articulated here, in law, as what currently exists in the PO, in the RPA, sorry, not the PO, the RPA, with respect to the whole question of the reporting requirement, I articulated that I have a difficulty in the manner in which it's just very open-ended. So report as required. I want to get your thoughts on that. It just seems very discretionary there.
There must be a practice, if we know what the practice is in this regard, both in Grenada and beyond, that might help us.
Okay.
So if the supervisor of elections can help us there.
Right. So I have, when I took up office, have spoken to two former supervisors of elections. Okay. And I have asked them, as it relates to the reporting to Parliament. Okay, 2 questions I asked. Have you actually reported to Parliament? And then when I asked that question, they said no. Do you know the minister that is directly responsible for reporting? Reporting when you report, and again, I got a negative. I believe, and this is my firm belief, that of course the supervisor of election must give reports or must report to the Parliament, to let them know exactly what are some of the challenges, what are some of the issues. Okay, what I have decided, I am going to report. Okay, but as far as I'm concerned, what needs the reporting must happen. For example, when we have the time I've chosen is when we have finalized the procurement of of the new voter registration system, and of course all the things that was outlined by Dr. Bubb there, the list, the whole issue of the running of the department, I certainly am obligated and committed to making that report.
So, Dr. Alexis, let us get your interpretation of that in respect of understanding. Should there be an amendment here, in other words, with respect to saying that reporting has to meet particular requirements? Because based on what the supervisor just said, hey, other supervisors really did not follow any type of precedent in that regard.
The Constitution of Grenada, of any other Commonwealth country for that matter, is a combination of the written text of the Constitution, called the Constitution of Grenada, which has to be read together with conventions, practices. So one convention or practice would have been, as the supervisor pointed out, he turned quite naturally to his predecessors in office and asked them, have you been reporting? And he got the answer there. The other thing the Constitution would expect is that members of Parliament, especially on the opposition benches, would be asking questions in the House of Representatives about the functioning of the Parliamentary Elections Office, and would be demanding that there be reports. That is how the constitutional system would work together. The text of the Constitution, practices, conventions, and what about membership of the House, especially opposition members. It would be very, not impossible, but untidy for the Constitution or the RPA to say the supervisor must report every, say, year or every 6 months before the next general election, whatever have you, because nobody will know what will be 6 months before the next general election. So I would urge that all those three elements be made to work together: the text, the Constitution, practices, and opposition members of the House asking questions. Of course, Dr. Bubb, members of the media have their role here too. They would be asking questions. So it's one dumpling full in the pot, and it will be a good mixture after all.
Yes, let me bring back Mr. Pei. Mr. Pei, there is something that you wanted to add.
No, well, Dr. Alexis mentioned the persons that, the one dumpling, so to speak. And I just wanted to add civil society organizations, because they have been close in terms of requesting information and asking questions. And the truth is that some of the questions that they have asked and some of the things that they have intonated are critical for the whole issue of democracy.
Now, before we get...
Democracy is alive in Grenada then.
Yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is. It is.
But let us get to some questions here. And then we will get to I believe, what is considered perhaps the elephant in the room shortly, just before you leave, Mr. Pei. One viewer is asking, let's see if I can pull that up here. Mr. Pei spoke to the removal of dead persons. How do we treat with persons who we know do not reside in Grenada? Again, we will be getting to that shortly. But let us get to another question here. Can you inquire from Mr. Pei if the POE is in a position to administer an election in the absence of a new voter registration system?
Well, currently, the system that we have is functioning and functioning well. We are able to register persons, okay? And we are able to produce a list. The data that we have, if an election is called tomorrow, we are able to produce a list and say, these are the persons that are eligible to vote, okay? Now, we don't necessarily need a voter registration system for an election, if you understand the context in which I speak. What we need is a system where we could register persons, and that's what the voter registration system is. getting persons on the list. Okay, getting persons on the list. So for the day of election, we don't need a voter registration system on the day, or even after the writ has been written from the Governor General, because registration stops at that time. Okay. However, as we go along, before the writ is written, before the writ is issued, we certainly would need a voter registration system. We do not need a new voter registration system in this particular period, because the one that we have is functioning and is functioning well.
But if I may follow up then, if it is functioning, can you articulate I suppose first and foremost, if you can give us some background to the need for having that new system in place, one, and what deficiencies currently exist in this system that necessitates, and also just a quick follow-up, I'm sorry, I know you have to go shortly, but in respect of data protection and the custodianship of the data, there was an issue in the last election over the PO server being the Prime Minister's office, etc., and that was a major issue. But can you speak to those issues in relation to the system?
Right. So, as it relates to the system, if I could remember your questions, the storage of data, we have data stored not just physically at the office, okay, but we do have data stored in virtual space, so to speak, so that when there is need for data, okay, let's say the office has for some reason or the other caught on fire and we lost items there, we still have the ability to be able to pull that list so that we can have an election. I can't. Please remind me of the other questions that you have asked.
Yes. In respect of the current system, what are the deficiencies that exist in it that necessitates a new system?
Okay, so for example, we had a major breakdown. I think it was in 2025. We had an issue with our roof, and we had to repair the roof. Okay, and through repairs, through the issues of rain, and so we had an issue where the entire system shut down, and we had to struggle to rally and truly get it back up and running. But some of these incidents actually it did not last for very long. Okay, we had a situation at the beginning of this year, for example, where we had certificates expiring. All right, and that we had to rectify that within, I think it was 2 days, and we were able to get the system back up and running. Now, the system is old, okay, and some of the certificates and so they expire, but we have now implemented a system where we would monitor the expiration of this and address it even before it happens. Okay. Now that as far as I'm concerned, that is very, it's kind of touch and go kind of situation. So we do need to get a new system that would satisfy the demands of the Parliamentary Elections Office and the electoral process and registration. And we also want to ensure that some of these certificates, and so that we may have to ask persons to give, we are able to control some of those bits and pieces. Now, maybe on another interview, I could bring in my technical persons to better explain.
Yes. I think that would be very instructive.
Better explain the whole process of the voter registration system.
Because the other question that I have, I know I'm belaboring this point, but on election day, again, assuming the worst, we know how technology can work sometimes. On election day, this system, let's say election is called in September, which again, you may or may not have procured that new computer system, right? But that system, that current system that you have with all of the issues that you've just referenced, has another issue on election day. On the night of election, when we're counting the votes, what is your backup plan
Right. So
what is the analog plan, if you will?
Okay. So here is one. On election day, if the system goes down, we would not have to worry because we would not be registering. The system is only for registration
purposes.
Right? For registration purposes only. Okay. As it relates to a backup plan, okay, for let's say that the system goes down, God forbid, we certainly would have to look at all possible options that we have on the table to be able to continue the registration process. That is the best answer I can give at this time.
Very well. So now let us quickly go on, sir, because we have 10 minutes with you. The question, and I'm going to bring back Dr. Alexis here on this question, and later Mr. Ned later on in the segment when we take a break. But that has to do with the whole question of residency requirement versus domicile requirement, or who qualifies Grenadian citizen versus Commonwealth citizens. We've been hearing a lot of conversation about this in recent time. And again, as I articulated last week, my frustration with those conversations, it is not necessarily grounded in what the RPA says. So, Mr. Pear, because you're guided by the Representation of the People's Act, someone goes into an office, a polling division office, the returning officer is there, they're responsible for the intake of that potential voter registrant. In the context of the Act, what are they instructed to do? What are they looking for to ensure that that elector satisfies that residency requirement, but also the other requirements? You have to be over the age of a certain age to vote, etc. 18, correct? Yes.
Now the law is, as far as I'm concerned, is clear on the requirements that a person would need to get registered.
Yes.
Okay. Of course, Commonwealth citizens, the law talks about that, and I want to refer to. Let me get it up here so I could speak to it. The Act of 2018. All right, Act number 13 of 2018, Representation of the People's Act.
And I believe that's Section 32.
No, Section 12.
Section 12, okay.
Right. Proof of ordinary residence. Let me see if I can get something before that to basically put it in perspective. Okay, so let me go back now to Cap 286. Just give me 1 second, please.
Yes,
Cap 286.
Yeah, Cap 286A.
Right.
I have it pulled up here on my end as well.
Right, so let me just
supplying. Are we referencing supplying information on qualified electors? We have that section.
Well, we are looking at we are looking first and foremost at the whole issue of registration. All right, the whole issue of registration. Who is eligible for registration, and that would be Part 3, Section 6. Okay. And I'll read verbatim, okay? Subject to Section 7, a person shall be entitled to be registered as an elector in any one constituency if he, A, is a citizen of Grenada, or B, is a Commonwealth citizen who has resided in Grenada for a period of at least 12 months immediately before the date of his registration. C, has attained the age of 18 years, and D, is ordinarily resident in that constituency. That is the what Cap 286A says. All right.
What section are we working? Because I want to ensure that I'm
Part 3, registration of electors. Right. Section 6. Yeah, 5 and 6.
Okay, there we go. All right. Yes, Part 3. Okay.
So these are the basic requirements. Very basic requirements. Okay. So if you're a Commonwealth citizen, you're living here for a period of at least 12 months. Immediately before you get registered, you can be registered to vote. You have attained the age of 18 years, and you are ordinarily resident in that constituency. Now, the issue I think a number of persons would have is the definition for ordinarily resident in that.
And that is why we have Dr. Alexis here. So.
Right. Now, To get registered, you must be in a constituency.
Yes.
When you go to get registered, you must register in the constituency for which you belong. So there are constituency office throughout the length and breadth of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martin. Okay, so you go there and you present your documentation. So let's look at Act 18 of 2018. Act number 13 of 2018.
And that is supplying information to qualified electors, correct? Unqualified electors, no?
Well, let me see if I can find it.
Yes, and you will guide me accordingly. Yes,
Let me see if I can find it. So basically, when you come to get registered, and I will just say it off the cuff. When you come to get registered, there are some documents that you must bring. So you need to have a passport, or your birth certificate to prove that you are a citizen of Grenada. Okay, so your birth certificate would say that you were born in Grenada. You may have a passport, and you might be born, let's say, St. Vincent. Okay, so that would qualify you for a Commonwealth citizen, right? You will also must have proof of address. Okay, so you may have a bill, you may have some other document that says, okay, this is where I live, this is where my meals come, this is where I consider my residence to be. Okay, so if you go down to section 12, section 12, 4A, proof of ordinary residence. I think that's the way the contention is. Now, what this is saying is that these are the proof that the electoral office would use to ascertain ordinary residents. All right? And I read, the following documents may be used by a person to establish proof of ordinary residence: a recent utility bill, a copy of a current lease agreement, a copy of current recent receipts, a copy of property tax demand notice, or any other document that the supervisor of elections may deem acceptable. If I go ahead, notwithstanding subsection 1, where a person is residing in his or her own parent or guardian, the requirement under subsection 1 shall be satisfied if a person provides the registration officer with a signed declaration of his or her parent or guardian in the prescribed form. So there are forms that a person would use. For example, there are persons who are 18, 19 that they still reside with their parents. All right. So basically, this is it. That's basically some of the documentation that would prove ordinary residence, and that is what we have now. If there are issues where we might have taken somebody off the list because of they might be more than 5 years outside of the hello.
Yes, no, you go ahead. I'm here. Yes.
No, I'm just trying to get back. I'm not. Right. So if they, for example,
you go ahead. Yes.
If they are, for example, there are some contentions that a person or objections and so that might be raised. All we can do is produce the evidence that persons would submit to be able to say, look, they are ordinarily resident there.
Right.
That's the length and breadth of it, really and true.
Yeah. Let us finally, because in terms of public education, I know that in the lead up to the election and anytime there is an enumeration process, you do have issues relevant to if you will, public education coming from the Parliamentary Elections Office on enumeration. I remember back in the day, they had loudspeakers going around reminding people of the enumeration process and so on. I remember those days.
Yeah, we don't do that. We don't do that anymore. We don't do that anymore. But let me, as you say, public education. Let me say this here very quickly. We have embarked on public education. We have a civic and voter registration officer and that's a big name, but for want of a better word, our PR person. Okay, and he goes out on a weekly basis, sometimes 3-4 times a week, to speak to radio stations and so forth. We are now planning to, even beef that up a little bit, because persons are saying, look, I'm not hearing you, I am not getting the information, and there is need for maybe a more robust approach to it. But we are doing what we can do. Okay, there should be publications in the newspapers, and of course there are various media entities that would have there. I have been in the last couple of months. I have been in the radio station.
I've seen you making the rounds. Yes,
right. So we are doing things, but maybe again, some persons may feel that it's not enough. So certainly we have listened, and we are going to. But let me tell you, it takes an effort to so do. Our staff is we have limited staff. Okay, it's only one person that's doing this, along with myself. When I get the opportunity to really go out and so, but we are trying our best to ensure that the public gets the information. We as we gravitate closer to election day, we certainly would see more. There would be snippets, there would be jingles, there would be things, and all of these things are things that we sat down and we plan to do to ensure that the public is educated.
Now, I understand that that there is also public education happening in schools.
Right.
Can you articulate the rationale for that, the genesis for that?
Now, this has been done not only under my watch. This has been done previously, okay? And actually it's supposed to be done, so it should have been done on an annual basis. So every time, somebody turns 18, and there are persons that turn 18 every year, okay? We go to the schools and we let them know about, their rights, about voting, educate them about the whole process of elections and so, and we have done that. We have gone to the Royal Grenada Police Force, for example, the recruit department of the Royal Grenada Police Force, and let them know that they have to get on the police list. Yes, they may have registered before and they are on the general list, but there's a special voting period for police. So we are saying, look, you need to get onto the police list, so you need to get registered. Okay, they are young recruits sometimes, and we have to engage them in discussion as why you would want to vote, or why you would want to participate in elections. Now, of course, the police on election day, they would be occupied. They would be manning the polling stations, would be assisting with security, so they would not have the time to vote. So the law saw it fit to create a specific period before the general election for the general public, so that they can vote.
I believe is it a week before, or
I think I can't say specifically, but I think it's about a week before.
Yeah, I believe that is the case. Mr. Pear, thank you so much. I know that you do have to go.
Yes, and so, I do promise, Dr.
But we have to have you back for a longer conversation to be able to take some of the questions.
And I do hope that when I come back, I'm able to better respond to you as it relates to the new voter registration.
And to the viewer questions as well, because there are a lot of those. Yes, but we have to respect your time, and again, availability, guest availability.
I do thank you for that respect, sir.
Yes, absolutely, sir. So viewers and listeners, what we want to do is to take a quick break, and we'll come back with as we continue this conversation on voting in Grenada. And I know some of you here are saying that you are tired with this conversation. Well, I do not know what other media platforms you've been watching, but this is the first time that the Bubb Report has addressed this conversation in a very long time, as a matter of fact. And if you're tired with this conversation, you don't have to be here. There are other platforms that can occupy your time. So if you want to excuse yourself, you can do that right now. I honestly do not have the patience for it. I really don't. I really don't. So let's take a break and we'll be right back as we continue this conversation.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797.
Concern of the NDC caretaker for St. John was
347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
And folks, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Now, as we continue this conversation on, let me just remove this here for now. Yes, so as we continue this conversation with Dr. Alexis, now joined by Mr. Dave Ned, on pertinent matters raised in the last segment, we want to take you down memory lane, if you will, and that's back to 2018, when the then National Democratic Congress, which was in opposition at the time, accused the Parliamentary Elections Office of facilitating the registration of electors, Grenadian electors, who lived in neighboring St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who were registered to vote in the constituency of Carriacou and Petit Martinique. The then opposition NDC accused also the Parliamentary Elections Officer of engaging in voter padding. In other words, people voting across different constituencies. Famously, folks who were ordinarily resident, again, in St. George Northeast constituency, were accused of voting in the town of St. George area. Now, fast forward to 2026, the current opposition is raising red flags with respect to outsider voting registration, the same type of outsider voting registration concerns raised by a previous opposition. Now, is this issue of voter registration being politicized depending on who is in government versus who is in opposition? So let's take a look at this clip and we will continue this conversation that we have.
Concern of the NDC caretaker for St. John was people registering in one area and living in another.
My friends, we have a problem. The last example I would give is MO7, where 8 people, MO7 is the Mount Granby, Monesbit area. We have 8 people who are from Marigot, Florida, and Loreto in these areas. I want to stress again that these things didn't happen prior to February of 2017. We have gross incompetence in these offices. The NNP operatives brought in their people from all kinds of places, and they all were registered even before the people that were in the line. There is corruption, my friends.
The party also pointed to a video posted on social media which depicted a woman wearing a green t-shirt, supposedly of the NNP's Women's Arm, assisting with the registration process at an electoral office. Another concern raised was over registration in Carriacou. Caretaker for the town of St. George, Claudette Joseph, explains.
A system that is fully computerized. Now we have information that in the constituency of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, a number of Vincentian nationals who are not qualified to be registered as voters in Grenada because they have not met the legislative requirement in terms of residency, have been registered to vote. We are also reliably informed, and I am told that we have documentation to confirm that in Carriacou and Pitimartinique, people who provide documentation that does not meet the legal requirement for registration were nonetheless registered. And when oral objections were raised with the office in Grenada, they were told, let the registration go ahead and then file your objection. Let the irregular registration go ahead and then you could file an objection.
Joseph says it has also been brought to her attention that the NNP activists are going house to house claiming that they are from the Parliamentary Election Office.
In several constituencies, and I can point to two specific examples, you have the NNP field workers going door to door and representing the people that they are working with the Parliamentary Elections Office. That particular occurrence points to some degree of collusion as far as I'm concerned. They are the last person who mentioned that to me. It happened last week, Wednesday, in the Southeast constituency, St. George Southeast constituency. And the lady said to me that they approached her and said that they were soliciting information for the Parliamentary Elections Office. And she said I immediately identified one of them as a known NNP activist. And she said, no, you're not. You are working for the NNP. And eventually they admitted.
For GBN News, I am Rachel Bain.
You said over 500 diaspora residents will be coming to register and to vote in the next election. My brother, that would be illegal. The Representation of the People's Act will say to you that there's a very fundamental principle that must be adhered to and followed. Ordinary place of residence. If you're not ordinarily resident in Grenada, you're not qualified to be an elector, except you are in the country and you'll be here for more than 12 months. So those of you, I wish I meet you. And if you're not ordinarily resident, I will love to challenge you legally, because you have just said nationally and internationally that you are prepared and you're bringing people to break the laws of Grenada House. Shame of you. You come on national TV and say that you hold something that people say that plane would come. Bro, that's a non-starter. You come on national TV to sprue hearsay and what could be lies. You don't do such. You speak of facts.
Again, folks, what we are seeing here is that both parties in opposition accused the Parliamentary Election Office of facilitating the registration of non-resident folks. In the case of then NDC Town of St. George caretaker, Ms. Claudette Joseph, back in 2018, she accused the PO of facilitating a registration of folks who are not ordinarily resident. Fast forward, the NNP in opposition is doing the same thing. But the curiosity I have here is this: is the Parliamentary Elections Office being used as a punching bag only when you are in opposition? And that is a fundamental question that I think that needs to be addressed. The former, well, not the former, but when they were in opposition, Ms. Joseph said it. Folks who are not resident and I suspect they are Grenadians as well. I mean, everybody talks about the diaspora as meaning North America and Brooklyn, but there are Grenadians who live in other Caribbean islands who are also CARICOM citizens. It's not CARICOM, but Commonwealth citizens. So are we accusing them back then of also doing the same thing that the new National Party is now accusing Grenadians further afield of doing? Again, you know, and this is one of the reasons why I would never get involved in politics. There is a particular herd mentality with politics that's just really comical and really comical at times, really. But let me continue this time. I see Dr. Alexis smiling here. Let me bring in Mr. Dave Ned and Dr. Francis Alexis. Gentlemen, welcome back to the program. But Dr. Alexis, before we get into the conversation, Dr. Alexis, you've participated in many a Grenadian election. Just a quick human interest question here for you, sir. What was your most memorable campaign? You competed in '84. You ran in '84, all in St. George Southeast. In 1990, in 1995, in 1999 on the PLM ticket with that accommodation, limited accommodation. What was your most memorable campaign, sir?
First of all, get your facts straight. Under the Prime Ministership of Nicholas Brathwaite, there was no allegation of interference with the electoral office.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. I stand corrected, sir.
From 1990 to 1995, there was no such allegation.
Okay.
Let the gentleman rest in peace as he's entitled to.
Yes.
1984 was very special. You were talking about moving from October 1983 to 1984, not too long afterwards. And with all that had happened in October 1983, you can understand that Grenada was quite emotionalized. Even in December 1984, you had to convince the people that going back to Westminster politics would enable the state to take up its rightful place again among nations practicing proper parliamentary election offices. So that was very special. And I wouldn't want to compare any other election cycle with that of December 1984.
Okay, very well, very well. Again, Vincentians can also be Grenadians, to your comment, Mr. Antoine. They could also be a Vincentian carrying a Vincentian passport cannot register to vote in Grenada. So obviously they would have to be Grenadians, right? But Mr. Ned, also welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. But we really want to begin the conversation by centering, first and foremost, the amendments to the Representation of the People's Act that was done in 2018, rather, by the new National Party administration, who had a majority in the parliament at the time. And Mr. Ned, I want to begin with you, sir, in respect of understanding the amendments that were made to the RPA then. Can you, in your view, articulate what was done and the concerns with respect to the amendments that were made then?
Thank you, Dr. Bob. And good morning to Grenada. Good morning to Dr. Alexis. And just to say that I feel honored this morning to be part of this program and trying to put context to the Grenada Constitution, the right to the entitlement to vote, and the provisions in the Representation of the People's Act. For us to understand the amendments that were made to the Representation of the People's Act in 2018, which as civil society we have cited various concerns since 2018. The original Representation of the People's Act was done in 1993. It was amended in 1994, 1997, 2006, 2008. And then there was a pivotal amendment in 2011 when the new voters registration system, a computerized registration system, was introduced. There were other amendments in 2018. If we are to go back to the Grenada Constitution, that makes provision for this democratic process. Section 32 of the Grenada Constitution comprises of entrenched provisions that cannot be altered outside of a referendum. And it comprises of provisions that give Parliament the authority. And it gives Parliament a very specific authority. It in fact reads as follows. And I'm reading now from section...
And what section of the Constitution? That's section 32 of the Constitution?
32A of the Constitution.
32A of the Constitution.
Yes, subsection 1A.
Subsection 1A, okay.
And it gives a directive to every Commonwealth citizen who has attained the prescribed age and who possesses such qualifications relating to residence or domicile in Grenada as Parliament may prescribe. And it goes on to say, shall. There's an entitlement here now. Unless he is disqualified by Parliament from registration as a voter for the purposes of elections of members of the House of Representatives, be entitled to be registered. All right, so let us just break that up for a minute. Section 32 speaks to a Commonwealth citizen. That is an entrenched provision. That directive cannot be changed outside of the people of Grenada going to referendum. Right? It also speaks to a prescribed age for voting. That is confirmed in sections 32C of the Grenada Constitution. And again, it says the prescribed age for the purposes of this subsection, that is subsection 1, shall be the age of 18 years of age. Shall be. Cannot be changed outside of a referendum. So every Commonwealth citizen who is 18 years of age, and now we get to the part where Parliament can prescribe. And
which is what they did in 2018, right?
Which is Parliament, the amendments.
Yes,
the original prescription, the original prescription, which is governed, which is contained in the Representation of the People's Act, was in 1993. I think that was the first act. The first act, Act number 35 of 1993. So that was the first act. And it has been amended as we go along, as I indicated earlier. So in 2018, a number of amendments were made, sweeping amendments. And at the time, without going into all of the amendments, what came instinctively to us was that the residency consideration that was included in section 32 of the Constitution with regards to voting, with regards to registration, the amendments in section 5 were inconsistent. With the
let's take a pin there and let's bring in Dr. Alexis. Dr. Alexis, in your view, as a constitutionalist, if you will, in respect of the amendments that the new National Party administration prescribed in 2018, does that go, as I say, I suppose, ultra vires? Would that be the proper term to use? With section 32 of the Constitution, sir? Let's get your view on this.
The first thing to note, Dr. Bubb, is that Mr. Ned has no quarrel with the original RPA. gifted to the country by the government of Nicholas Brathwaite, in which I served as the Attorney General, and I drafted the RPA. So we start from the basis that, as drafted initially, the RPA is beyond challenge. But I would invite Dr. Ned to go and look at section 111. That's section 111, subsection 1, to see the definition of Commonwealth citizen.
And that is in the Constitution or in the RPA?
This is the Constitution of Grenada.
Okay.
Section 111, subsection 1, and it defines the term Commonwealth citizen thus. I read for you, Dr. Bubb. Commonwealth citizen has such meaning as Parliament may by law prescribe. That's the end of the quote. Arguably then, it seems to me, Parliament may prescribe in relation to Section 32, because that is not an amendment of Section 32. It's making a prescription. May prescribe two different arrangements for the term Commonwealth citizen without contravening the Constitution. And that is what was done in 2018. I carry no brief for that because that was a different government from the one in which the RPA was passed. But I am suggesting that within the context of Section 111, subsection 1, it may be argued that what Parliament did in 2018 was to prescribe that Commonwealth citizen means exactly as it says in the same Section 32, Grenadians and non-Grenadians. And perhaps that is what the new government was thinking at the time. So I do not come with guns blazing here. I simply put it out for what it is worth, that it may well be that what was done in 2018 can pass muster. Thank you.
So you're saying that it can pass muster. Mr. Ned, you do not agree with that position that it can pass muster?
Absolutely not. Dr. Alexis pointed out clearly that Parliament may make a prescription. Dr. Bubb, for those of us who are involved in medicine, for those and who are treated by doctors, we receive prescriptions from the doctor. The doctor prescribes a particular medicine for a particular ailment, and he gives you a regime. You take it 3 times a day, prior to meals, and there should be no alcohol. For a different prescription, he may say, you can drink alcohol, but don't drink milk. Those are prescriptions. So for the purposes of voting, unless what Dr. Alexis has not included in section 111, in section 111, subsection 1, it says here clearly, in this constitution, the Grenada 1973 constitution, unless the context otherwise requires. And those 3 words in the interpretation are very important. Unless the context otherwise requires. Now, if we go to sections, if we go to chapter 3 of the Constitution, that deals with the establishment, the composition of our Parliament, which involves the election of members to the House of Representatives. This is what we're speaking about. The context here in section 32, subsection 2, is absolutely clear. It is absolutely clear. We are dealing with every Commonwealth citizen. Notice the word every. So it's not an isolated something. It is very inclusive. What is absolutely necessary is the residency qualifications. And that is where the issue lies. Dr. Alexis is in agreement with me that this constitution, according to sections 106, is the supreme law. And if any other law is inconsistent with the provisions of this constitution, it is void. Basic constitutional law. And in this context, in the context of the elections of members of the House, residency is a requirement. It's a very important requirement. And who votes? Every Commonwealth citizen. And it is repeated in the qualifications for membership for the candidates who can put themselves up. They have to be Commonwealth citizens. So it's not by accident. It's repeated in the Constitution.
I think
Dr. Alexis, please. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I think that Mr. Ned, with the greatest respect, is missing the importance of that word prescribe. He gave us a disquisition on medicine, but we are talking today about the Constitution. And you will note, Dr. Bubb, that both in section 32, I know that Mr. Ned was talking about 32.1. He obviously means 32.2. 32 subsection 2A.
Thank you, Dr. Alexis, for the correction.
Setting that out in passing. But the point I want to make is that both in section 32.2A and the section 111.1 of the Constitution, they are both used in the identical word, namely prescribe. So 111 says Parliament may prescribe. Equally, 32.2A also says Parliament may prescribe. Now, that is of vital importance. Let me explain why. Yes, I agree with Mr. Ned that 32 is entrenched at the level at which it cannot be altered
without a referendum.
But, Dr. Bubb, when the Constitution says in 32.2A, Parliament may prescribe contrary to what is in the same 32.2A itself, the Constitution is there indicating absolutely clearly that what may be prescribed by Parliament obviously may be different from what is in 32.2 itself. Otherwise, the Constitution could not have said that Parliament may prescribe. Let me repeat that for you. When 32.2A says Parliament may prescribe, it is enabling Parliament without a referendum to do what may be prescribed, namely, set qualifications relating to residence or domicile regarding Commonwealth citizens. And it is the same word prescribe, which the Constitution uses in section 111, subsection 1. Thank you.
So this is the question that I have, and Mr. Netta, I'll give you an opportunity to respond, because we did have a referendum, and I want us to speak to, in the referendum, I believe it might have been clause 6 in the last referendum, that the bill was fixed date of elections. And so in the context of understanding what is prescribed versus what is not prescribed here versus the entrenched provisions, what was that, Dr. Alexis, and I'll get to you, Mr. Ned, to respond to this. What was the referendum attempting to do? that in respect of the current deficiencies that exist here in that section 32 here, that the referendum was attempting to do that speaks to the deficiency that we're speaking about here now?
With respect, I think the two things are separate and distinct, one from the other.
Okay.
But if they are addressing the same question, then I will say this.
Yes.
The Constitution itself gives members of the House a 5-year tenure. And any attempt to cut that down, whether by fixed date elections or not, would be contravening that provision of the Constitution. And the Privy Council itself has answered that question in a Trinidadian case, although I think that the Court of Appeal decision in Trinidad and Tobago was infinitely superior to what the Privy Council reached. But that's beside the point. The point I'm making is that once the Constitution is giving representatives a 5-year tenure, cutting that down outside the parameters of the Constitution is unconstitutional. Whereas here, I'm asking Mr. Ned again to look at it, that when in section 32, subsection 2, the Constitution is specifically enabling Parliament to prescribe differently from what is set out in section 32(a). It must follow, think about it, Dr. Bubb. It must follow that the Constitution is saying Parliament may prescribe differently from what is set out in section 32(2). Otherwise, there would have been no need for the Constitution to say Parliament may prescribe, because of course Parliament may alter the Constitution to prescribe. But I'd rather say 99.99% of the times you see the Constitution, whether in Grenada or any other part of the Commonwealth, you see the word Parliament may prescribe. The Constitution is saying Parliament may make provision here without going through the requirements of entrenchment. That's what it means, surely.
Mr. Ned?
Thank you, Dr. Bubb. And Dr. Alexis, there's no ambiguity. And let me repeat it. There is absolutely no ambiguity. Parliament is authorized in section 32, subsection 2, to make a prescription with regard to qualifications for residency of every Commonwealth citizen who is above the age of 18. And I said initially that there were entrenched provisions and there are provisions that are not entrenched. The Parliament cannot make a prescription that goes against any of those entrenched provisions. That would be automatically make it inconsistent and void. So what are the qualifications that we were talking about? In the original act in 1993 that you were a part of, you included an enumeration process. And the enumeration process was responsible for giving qualified electors certificates. When you're qualified, Dr. Bubb, you're a doctor, you have a certificate. Dr. Alexis, you are a doctor. You also have a certificate. I don't have that certificate. But in the context of the Grenada election, that certificate does not matter. What matters is whether you were enumerated or not, whether you were resident at the time you were going to register. So the prescription that is made for Commonwealth citizens governs the Grenadian citizen, as the Grenadian citizen is a part of the set of Commonwealth citizens. And that is what gives him the entitlement to vote. So the amendments over the period remove, well, not necessarily remove, but emasculated the authority of the enumeration officer.
Right, in the context of the primacy of the Grenadian citizen versus the Commonwealth citizen, but as your colleague here, Cassandra Mitchell, is saying, the panelists emphasis on Commonwealth citizens, but the RPA has two types of citizenship: a Grenadian citizen and a Commonwealth citizen. In the context of registration to vote and electing a member to the House, can we get clarity on where Parliament gets the authority to make laws related to citizenship? Dr. Alexis, please.
Parliament gets its authority to make laws relating to citizenship under the provision which says Parliament may make laws for the peace, order, and good government of the country. Also, the chapter on citizenship in the Constitution is not entrenched at the level at which referendum approval is needed. Let me just draw your attention from my authority for saying so. The citizenship chapter is in chapter, I think I have it here, 7, V7. And when you go to the entrenchment list, Schedule 1 to the Constitution, you do not see chapter 7 there. That is how we know that chapter 7 may be altered without referendum approval. In any event, it seems to me, if I may kindly suggest,
yes,
Dr. Bubb, Mr. Ned and I are not going to agree on this. He has stated his position,
yes.
I mine, and we can think about it. Because it seems to me, with respect, that there are far more pressing issues here we need to address. For example, one, I saw earlier on in your program that the present Attorney General, to whom I pay tribute as having been the only Attorney General of this country ever to get the Constitution of Grenada amended. So I pay tribute to her for that. However,
in respect of the oath,
the oath,
yes, the oath of allegiance.
But when the President Attorney General says that, or certainly intimates that the matter of trying to prevent somebody from getting onto the register, voting register, cannot be, he seems to me to be saying, when the Parliamentary Election Office said, let a person get on and then challenge it. And she seemed to have an issue with that. I think the Electoral Office was right. I refer to the case of Ventos and Chief Electoral Officer. That was decided in 2018 by the Caribbean Court of Justice. What happened there was that the Chief Electoral Officer in Barbados was trying to get Professor Eddie Ventos, a St. Lucian professor of law at Cayville, Barbados, trying to prevent him coming onto the register. He went to the High Court in Barbados. The High Court issued what is called mandamus, an order ordering the electoral officer to put on Ventos's name onto the register. Because the High Court judge said, the Chief Justice, the man had a right as a Commonwealth citizen to be on the register. If you have an issue with him getting on, so to speak, put him on. And if somebody wants to get him off, go through the process. The Court of Appeal agreed with the Chief Justice, but said that the Chief Justice should not have ordered the Chief Electoral Officer to put him on. It went to the CCJ. The CCJ went higher than the Chief Justice and said, if this Chief Electoral Officer doesn't get on Ventos by such and such a time, this Chief Electoral Officer is practically in contempt of court and will go to prison unless he can show cause, he or she, why she should not go to prison. Moral of the story, a person is qualified, entitled to be registered, the person is to be registered. If you want to get them off, go through the process of getting them off. So when the electoral office in Grenada said, let the persons go on, and if you want to challenge them being on, do that, they were quite in order when they did that. Good.
Thank you for that context. But quickly, Mr. Ned, yes, if you can just add an addendum, because we do want to get on to the current RPA in the context of ordinarily resident, because that is what has been animating a lot of debate and discussion. And we want to have a follow-up question as to whether or not in its current construct, whether an amendment may be required, especially in understanding what an ordinarily resident person would look like. But we'll get into that follow-up conversation. But Mr. Ned, go ahead, please.
Okay. Again, with respect to sections 32.2, Dr. Alexis wants to move on to the RPA. The RPA, every interpretation in the RPA is hinged upon clear and concise, precise understanding of what happens in front of us in sections 32.2 and sections 32.3. So Dr. Alexis just mentioned the word person in the Ventu case, in Barbados. And interestingly, if you go back to sections 32.2a, it begins with every Commonwealth citizen who is qualified. When you go to sections 32b, it now refers to that qualified elector, the person who has registered, who has met the residency or the residency requirement as a person. And there's a distinction. In 32A, the whole set is the Commonwealth without discrepancy. It is clear. The qualifications with respect to residency is for the Commonwealth citizen. And any prescription with respect to the Commonwealth citizen must apply to the Grenadian citizen. There's no discrepancy. Is not given unlimited power as they have in sections 38 of the Constitution.
Mr. Ned wants to stick on this Commonwealth citizen.
Yeah, because you want to run away from it, Dr. Alexis. You want to run away from it. No. And that is the basis.
No.
Yes, so as I said, Dr. Bubb, it is quite clear that Mr. Neda and I are not going to...
Right, and that is correct.
Yes,
that is a point of departure. That is a point of departure here. Absolutely. Yeah. But we do want to get to in the Representation of the People's Act here. The question, and that is in, if I may pull up the RPA in part 1 of the RPA, cap 286A, residential qualification. The question whether a person is or was ordinarily resident in a polling division at any material period shall be subject to sections 5, 6, and 7 of this Act, and rules 4, 5, and 6 be determined by reference to all the facts of the case. Okay. Now, for the purposes of, and then of course the supervisor of election just referenced enumeration, which seems to be now being replaced by continuous registration. But again, place of ordinary residence. The place of ordinary residence of a person is generally the place which has always been, which that person has adopted as the place of his habitation or home, whereto, when taken away from there, he intends to return, or specifically where a person usually sleeps in one place and has meals or is employed in another place. The place of ordinary residence is where that person sleeps. So let's start there in understanding the definition, Dr. Alexis, of ordinarily resident, because there are some a particular variables there that determines what an ordinarily resident citizen is, whether that's a Grenadian citizen or a Commonwealth citizen. So let us get your interpretation of this, sir.
First of all, since Mr. Ned is so much in love with Section 32(2)(a), I will invite you, Dr. Bubb, to take note that because of the width of Section 32, subsection 2, clause A, the Constitution is there dealing with both residence and or domicile. But the RPA is focusing upon residence and is not pivoting on domicile. And the reason must be this. The concept of domicile in domestic law is difficult to get on top of. You may define domicile as meaning a place which a person, one, considers to be his or her permanent place of abode, or two, intends in the end, and what is meant by in the end is debatable, in the end will be reverting to that place as indeed the person's place. Now, that person's place of living. Now, the word resident or residence is a little easier to come to terms with, and that is why you see in clause 4 here, and this is really the...
Are we referencing the clause 4 in the Act now, and not the Constitution?
We're in the Act now.
The Act, okay, good.
Yes. That is what you were just reading, Dr. Bubb.
Yes, correct, yes.
Good. And it is defining for you what is meant by ordinary residence. I'm not going to read it word for word, but the meat of the matter here in all these words is that a person's ordinary residence is, breaking it down now, in the context of the Act, the polling division, certainly the constituency in which a person spends his or her sleeping time mostly. It does address the question in clause 5, where you have different places. Place of ordinary residence of that person is the other place where he has another place.
There we go.
Now,
yes,
the reason the Act says you have to consider all the facts, you see there in clause 3, subclause 1, the meaning of ordinary residence has to be considered having regard to all the facts of the case. That's a starting position. But it does go on to give you some very useful pointers as to the person's habitation or home, where the person usually sleeps. If in one place, then it's easy. If he sleeps in one place, meals in another place where the person sleeps. And the reason why the Act is focusing more on residence than domicile is because defining residence is much easier than defining domicile. I hope that Mr. Ned is not going to say that the act is unconstitutional because it is talking more about residence than talking about domicile, and it should do the same in both, because everything to him is clear and easy, you know. But
no, Dr. Alexis, I'm not going to say that at all. It is very clear. It says residence or domicile. There's nothing, there's no ambiguity. It's clear. It's right in front of us. Sections 32(2). So I'm not going to disagree with you.
Good. So we can share an
So you can share what you said. You can share what, Dr. Alexis? You can share an ice cream.
Yes.
Ice cream and cake. Let's add some cake to that as well.
So we are agreed on that. The Parliament was perfectly entitled to focus on residence and not bother with domicile, for the reason that even among the best scholars at universities and the highest courts of the land, defining the word domicile is not easy. And even to define residence, you see the extent to which Parliament had to go and the rule-making authorities in giving you guidance as to how you can determine facts. But there's a related issue I'm anxious to get to, and it is this. If you go down to the matter of lapse in residence.
And what section are we looking at now? So that I can...
I am looking at clause 10.
Clause 10, okay.
In the RPA itself. So really it's section 10.
Section 10, okay, let me go ahead and pull that up here. Go ahead.
Representation of the People Act, section 10. Because this is integrally related to the point that the present Attorney General was making about preventing somebody from getting onto the register. This time it's the converse, getting somebody now off the register.
In other words, the right to remain registered.
Exactly.
All right.
Because you hear people saying, that person living abroad so long, why is that person still on the list? You heard what the supervisor of election said. When it's come to death, they can go to the registry of deaths and get a death certificate and relatively easy determine whether the person on the death certificate is the same person who is registered. And that might be easy. But he also spoke about somebody having lived abroad. And in one of your clips, Dr. Bubb, you heard one of the, activists then, to use a neutral word, saying that people living abroad so long, why are they still on the list? So section 10 is key. And I do want to ask you to spend a little time on this. It's so important. This is the right to remain registered. And among other things, it says, paragraph C, you see there? Cease to be ordinarily resident in Grenada for a period exceeding 5 years.
Cease for a period of exceeding 5 years being a citizen of Grenada. Cease to be ordinarily resident in Grenada for a period of 5 years.
Yes.
Yes.
In other words, this is saying, on its face, if the person is ordinarily resident no longer for 5 years, strike the person off the list. It's not as simple as that at all. King's Counsel Robert Ferguson, I was on another program, and he cited a case, a decision from St. Kitts Nevis, where Mr. Justice Thomas was dealing with practically this identical issue. And what Ruggles Ferguson was pointing out is that the judge was ruling here, so to speak, that just because the person was living abroad for a period exceeding 5 years, it does not necessarily follow that the person ceased to be ordinarily resident in Grenada. And so you can't go striking the person off the list. So I do want to leave this case with you. And what you can do, Dr. Bubb, is to share it with your viewership, listenership. It's part of a public education exercise.
Absolutely.
He sent it to me this morning. I asked him for it. I assured him I would give him credit for doing so. And I know, do so, I give him the credit for it. And I'm asking you to share it with your viewers and listeners. He will give it to you.
Yes.
But the gist of this decision is that, one, removing people from the list, the register, is not a simple thing. Secondly, just because a person was residing abroad or living abroad for a period exceeding this 5 years here need not necessarily mean that the person ceased to be ordinarily, for example, resident in Grenada. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Lawyers doing conveyances in Grenada, they would say, Dr. Bubb of Manjaloo in the parish of Grenada, now residing in Donald Trump Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. They would put both, because the lawyer is not prepared to say that Bubb is no longer ordinarily resident in Grenada. So he or she puts both. It's a practical day-to-day challenge we face in life. And that is why, in the case Archibald and Jones decided in 2013, the judge, Mr. Justice Errol Thomas, of blessed memory, put to flight those who came before him to strike off names from the petition register on the identical practical wording of Clause C in Section 10, putting the facile argument that, well, everybody knows John Brown was living in Brooklyn all these years. But what about John Brown living in Brooklyn but coming to Grenada for Christmas, for New Year, Independence, Carnival, etc., and spending good time in Grenada, still resident here? So that's what I want to do.
But if I may, Dr. Alexis, subsection B of Section 10, is there not a contradiction here? It says left Grenada and has not been ordinarily resident in that constituency for a period exceeding 12 months, not being a citizen of Grenada. But specifically here, has not been ordinarily resident in that constituency for a period exceeding 12 months.
No, because BMC are dealing with quite different dispensations.
Okay. So can we articulate
a person who is not a citizen of Grenada, a Commonwealth citizen, for example, but not a citizen of Grenada. Whereas C is dealing specifically with a citizen of Grenada. So if Mr. Ned succeeds in his argument that you cannot distinguish between Commonwealth citizen and citizen of Grenada consonantly with the Constitution, then he can go on to attack B and C too.
Dr. Alexis, it's clear. I don't understand the confusion. The differentiation has to do with the residency, and Parliament can make a law that prescribes.
Mr. Ned, if I may, sorry, if Mr. Ned, if you can just go back a bit, I'm not seeing your entire face.
I'm sorry.
There you go. Very well. Go ahead, please. Yes, go ahead now.
So that is clear. Dr. Alexis in his contribution to the 1993 legislation, Representation of the People's Act, included a section on enumeration. There were enumeration officers who took an oath of office, who visited the constituency, a house-to-house, what you want to call it, evaluation, a house-to-house verification, that persons lived where they, or let me use another word, that persons were resident where they claim to be.
And not domiciled, huh?
And not domiciled. We don't have to worry about the domicile. He spent a lot of time on domicile, but we don't have to worry about that because Parliament is not speaking to domicile. So we can throw that out the window.
Okay. I was just saying that
we are speaking with regard to residency, right? And there is an inclusion that we're not speaking of, we're not addressing, that the function of an enumeration officer. When was the last enumeration held in Grenada? It was held 16 years ago. So that was the last time the electoral list had any verification by a person who has taken an oath of office and whose results, whose summaries, whose listing was verified then by the registration officers. It's a process. We have removed that process now from the Representation of the People's Act. And we are now
reinstated. It should be reinstated.
Thank you. So we are agreeing on a lot of stuff.
So you have agreement there again.
We are agreeing again.
And again, but let us talk about that enumeration process that was eliminated, and that was back in 2018, correct? Was that when it was eliminated?
Last process, no, the enumeration process is still on law. It is in law. It's not practice.
But it's
the supervisor of elections and the governor general, who ultimately has the authority.
So were there any amendments made in 2018 to the enumeration process? That's no changes there.
The amendments in section 10 affected the qualifications. What is now considered as
the right to remain registered. That's that section you're referencing here.
Yeah. So what
and what you're saying is, sorry, I don't mean to cut, but what you're saying is that the enumeration, if you have enumeration, then it will take care of that amendment.
All the residency,
the residency issue rather
that we have, all the issues that we have with regards to residency. So we have an electoral list now that is 90,000 plus, 92,000 I think was the last date. We have a population.
With respect, I do not agree with that. The enumerator cannot decide that Dave Ned has ceased to be ordinarily resident in Grenada for a period exceeding 5 years just because when the enumerator turns up at his house, he's not there. And back time and again, he's not there. That's what the court is spelling out in this case here.
Dr. Alexis, prior to 2011, the enumerator would issue a certificate to the individual. You visit the house, the individual is there, you sit with him in his kitchen, in his living room, on his veranda, on his step. You'll say, he comes at 6 o'clock, he lives here, he resides here, he eats his meals here. He then, the enumerator, as a duty bearer who has taken an oath, issues a certificate. That is what determines when an elector is qualified. You get a certificate. You know that. You have many certificates. You get a certificate. And the person who gives you this certificate is the enumerating officer. You take that certificate, and I'm speaking about what happened prior to the amendments. The amendments now, you can give them a utility bill. A utility bill does not establish residence. It does not. It is not an official document. Nobody who gives you a utility bill has taken an oath of office. So where are we here?
Dr. Bubb.
Yes, Dr. Alexis, please.
What an enumerator can do to certify is that he did or did not see Dave Ned when he came once, twice, 3 times. No enumerator has the authority under the law and the Constitution to certify that Kellan Bubb ceased to be ordinarily resident
in Pomrose,
Grenada for a period exceeding 5 years. He cannot do that. No enumerator can do that. That's a matter for the law. The most the enumerator can say is that I went to that place 6 times, and Kellan Bubb claims he's residing there, but every time I go, he's not there. That's the furthest he can go.
So, Dr. Alexis, you're leaving out the part where the enumerations, the list that is compiled from the enumerator is passed to the registration officers. And it is then the duty of the registration officers to verify that list. And I'm speaking here prior to the amendments. The amendments have removed those qualifications. That is the point we are making.
Neither the enumerator nor the other officer just referred to can certify what is stated in Clause C. You cannot do that.
Dr. Alexis, you must first get on the list before you can get off the list. What the enumerator certifies is that you can get on the list. That is what we're dealing and we're addressing now.
But he can't decide either. That's the whole point with CCJ decided inventors and chief electoral officer.
So let us, this is an important inflection point because we do want to get to some viewer questions because there were some relevant and pertinent questions germane to the conversation, except for those who are annoyed that we were having the conversation. We're going to ignore those. Public education is public education, and that's what I do. And I would not be a victim to any let me just get to the questions, please. Let's get to some of the viewer comments. Let's see here. It baffles me, somebody saying it baffles me that so many people are trying to block born Grenadians from voting. The world is small and Grenada needs every able-bodied Grenadian to take part in the active development of our island. But I do want to get to some, that's just a general comment. There was a specific question here. And if you have any specific questions, audience, to Dr. Alexis or to Mr. Ned, please leave them in the chat so that we can get either gentleman to speak to that. Let's go on here. Just let me pull up. There was a question here. But Mr. Ned, I believe you wanted to add something else. Any one of you gentlemen wanted to add
Yes, I want to say this.
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Alexis.
It is, with the greatest respect, unbelievable that any conscious Grenadian can say there are too many discussions on the right to vote. Let me tell you why I say that. Grenadians, Caribbean people, Commonwealth people laid down their lives for the right to vote. It didn't come as a free gift. People were shot down by imperialist authorities before you got the right to vote. Even to get the right to vote here in Grenada, Gary had to be put on a battleship, a British battleship, and taken towards Carriacou. And when the British saw that Grenadians were indeed standing up for the right to vote, then they brought him back. This is not a gift handed up just like that. So I'm amazed that anybody can say you're having too many discussions on the electoral list on the right to vote. That is the very essence of our society as a free people.
And the democratic process as well.
The democratic process.
Yes, we have a question here. So in the context of both laws, is it legal to be resident in another state and just come to Grenada for a day, vote, and then return to the country of residence the following day? I think Dr. Alexis exhausted who can remain on the list there. as to who is residing where and not residing where, etc.
Exactly,
So I think
yes.
hopefully that question was answered there. Let's get on to, yes, let's get on to another question. What about born Grenadians owning real property in Grenada? Are you implying that these folks doesn't have vested interest in the outcome of elections? Again, that question is answered there in the context of ordinarily resident there as well. Let's get on to another question. Again, I'm seeing a lot of comments, not pointed questions here. Anthony Howard again, does the list have the exact street address of voters? This is an issue that needs to be addressed. To say someone lives in Belmont St. George is very inadequate. Gentlemen, your thoughts on that? Well, we don't have numbered, again, Mr. Howard, you're bringing a North American sensibility of, I suppose, zip codes and postcodes to how that occurs in Grenada. That does not happen. I think they're trying to implement that now, but I don't think that currently exists, right? Let's go on. Let's see here. A lot of comments, but not necessarily questions.
But we can have comments on the comments.
Yes, yeah, of course. Based on the case from St. Kitts just cited by Dr. Alexis, I concur with you. Thanks. One clarity I need is if that person never returned to Grenada 15, 20, 30 years, but decided one day after, then come just to vote and then return. Again, the act is clear on that, right, Dr. Alexis?
It depends on all the facts. 15, 20 years, never come back. A court might say this is extreme, meaning that, yeah, well, this person tolerably ceased to exist, certainly to reside in Grenada for more than 5. It depends on all the facts, all the facts.
Right. Let's get on to yes, Mr. Ned, go ahead, please. Yes.
I think I should say this, that we have no issue with our Grenadian brothers and sisters in the diaspora. Wherever you are, you've made a conscious, voluntary decision to go to the diaspora for your benefit and your enrichment, your prosperity. We have absolutely no interest, no issue with that. The issue that we're bringing to the table here are foundational issues. If the Grenadian people want members of the diaspora to vote in the election, there's a mechanism that we can change the entrance provision that describes a Commonwealth citizen to a Grenadian citizen. It's been done in other constitutions, right? And so you would see every Commonwealth citizen and a citizen. And it is very clear. There's no ambiguity. So we value the input that the diaspora makes. We value that. I personally think that the diaspora is our single greatest resource that we have mismanaged for the entire period of their existence. We have not been able to tap into that resource, and it is to the detriment of development in Grenada. We have politicized the diaspora, and that is where the issue comes. Partisan politics has kept us divided. That is where the issue is. So you hear both parties clamoring for change when they're in opposition, but when they're in government, they do the same thing. We have consistently since 2013 been advocating on these issues. The issue of the registration card. There was no enumeration process. There was no cleansing of the list before the cards were replaced. Could the cards be replaced? Did the law allow for replacement of a card? No. You can only replace your card if it was lost, if it was defaced. But we are having cards that were expired and they were replaced. And the supervisor has not addressed these issues. Those are the burning issues that we have.
Let us get Dr. Alexis's take on this. Yes, go ahead, Dr. Alexis.
What Mr. Ned just said. Section 32, subsection 2 of the Constitution in very simple, crystally clear words, gives Parliament the power to prescribe what residence domicile is needed for entitlement to vote in the country. Nothing could be clearer than that.
Well, you could make it clearer, Dr. Alexis, if you include that it is the residency of every Commonwealth citizen. That makes it absolutely clear who is 18 years of age. That clarifies it.
Even if that is done, sir, the bottom line is that Parliament may entitle Grenadians in the diaspora, whether in New York or in St. Vincent, Grenadine, Barbados, Trinidad, Tobago, who of them may vote if they possess such qualifications relating to residence or domicile as Parliament may prescribe. And Parliament has been prescribing. How then can one suggest that there is a difficulty here?
But Dr. Alexis, we're going back to Section 32, eh?
Well, let us not go back there.
I'm reading for you. I'm reading
it. You're not ready? Okay, well, let's go back there.
I have a bell.
So we have the bell, you're still late.
Let's bring some order. I don't have a gavel as they do in court, Dr. Alexis.
I didn't realize you have a bell.
I'm not sure what bell they use at the GBSS. Both of you gentlemen attended the GBSS, I believe. But let us get to that final question, and then we'll take a quick break and then come back for some closing comments on this. And again, viewers and listeners, the point of this conversation, because in all of these conversations that are being had, no reference, or at least passing reference, was made to some sections of the RPA without considering the full context of the RPA. And that is what we attempted to do here, to also appreciate how the RPA functions in the context of the Grenada Constitution as well. So some of you saying that perhaps this conversation has left you more confused than anything else. Some of you said that it clarified some things, but that is the point of having public education.
Yes.
That is the point of having public education.
Absolutely.
So yes, let's get to this viewer comment. Are you saying that Commonwealth citizens, non-Grenadians, trumps Grenadian citizens in the diaspora when it comes to voting in Grenada? I don't...
No. We're not saying that at all.
Okay.
There is,
just to be clear,
the Commonwealth citizen. The Commonwealth is a body of 56 nations, and in the context of the Grenada Constitution, what is written in Section 2, the directive is given to every member of the Commonwealth of Nations, with the proviso that they have residency qualifications. Once they meet the residency qualifications, and the Act in its present context requires a Commonwealth citizen to be resident in Grenada for 1 year prior to registration. You cannot come off the plane.
And you're referencing Commonwealth citizens specifically and not Grenadian nationals?
Commonwealth citizens.
Correct. Okay.
Specifically.
Right. Correct. And so that distinction, I think, is also very important. Now, what we want to do, folks, I know that you all have to go get your lunch, so I will take a quick break for today's editorial, and then we will come back to close the program. Thank you, gentlemen, for being flexible, and we do hope to have you back for another conversation. So please stand by as we take this quick break.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah, don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me here for much more than diplomatic passports. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bubb Report. We go there.
Now, folks, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. And before we get to closing comments, we do have a very important editorial. But before we do, folks, over on YouTube, we have 500 people over there. Kindly like this video this week. Just hit a like. It does not track you or anything like that. The algorithm would love you when you do that, so that we can share this very important program today with others. If you're over on Facebook, we urge you to do the same, as well as to share this week's live stream. Now, let's get on to the editorial quickly. It's a very short one this week. For many decades, Grenada celebrated its staunch and unapologetic relationship with the People's Republic of Cuba, even when the administration of the New National Party, even at a time rather when the NNP, the center-right organization, credited with establishing diplomatic relations with Cuba in the 1990s, in the late 1990s. Now, a curious thing happened at the United Nations we will be getting into shortly. But at the United Nations, Grenada historically stood with Cuba, consistently voting in favor of UN resolutions which called for ending the illegal and inhumane trade and economic embargo placed on the island by imperialist America. Well, all of that changed last week, folks, when Grenada abstained from voting on a resolution for additional debate proposed by Cuba on lifting the crippling American sanctions on the island that has given Grenada so much with so little. Many Grenadians have been catapulted into the middle class and perhaps into the 1% because of the education they received from Cuba. Cuba is responsible, in part, for the construction of the Maurice Bishop International Airport, the gateway to the world for Grenada, such a very important economic hub for Grenada's development. Grenada's decision, therefore, to abstain from supporting Cuba on this resolution has raised significant eyebrows, given the historic ties between the two countries. Well, the Bubb Report attempted to reach the government of Grenada for answers, and an administration which claims to love transparency has been very silent about this. We contacted the press secretary on 3 occasions over 3 days to obtain a response last week. Our calls have gone unanswered, as they were when we attempted to also reach the foreign minister, Joseph Andel. At least the number that I have for Mr. Andel, and there is a log, so he can't say that I did not call, because I did. However, we were able to reach Grenada's ambassador to the United Nations, who indicated that Grenada voted in favor of the original resolution, but chose to abstain on Cuba's request to reopen debate on the issue again. The question that was not, however, answered was the real reason why Grenada abstained, as opposed to the procedural answer given by Grenada's ambassador to the United Nations Miss Ingrid Jackson. But this, folks, is a story we will be following with great interest. We also reached out to former Foreign Minister, the Honorable Peter David, who indicated that the DPM will release a public statement once they gather all of the facts surrounding the matter. And this ends the editorial of the week. So we do want to take this time to bring back Mr. Ned and Dr. Alexis. Dr. Alexis and Mr. Ned, again, thank you all for agreeing to appear on the Bubb Report this week for this very important conversation, gentlemen, that we will be continuing to have. And viewers and listeners, we do urge you again with your questions. Dr. Alexis, that judgment, that ruling, I will be following up with Mr. Ruggles Ferguson so I can get that from him so that we can share that with the audience as well, not only now, but for future subsequent conversations. So, Mr. Ned, I do want to go over to you, sir, for some closing comments. Again, before we went to break, you spoke with reference to what needs to happen now. But there is also, again, a viewer comment here which articulates Andre Worm is saying, it is clear that we need constitution reform, but we tried that before by way of referenda. The people decided not to go forward with it. So here we are. So Dr. Netzer, over to you for closing comments, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Bob. And just to say that we have been advocating on these issues for over a decade. We do not cherry pick issues to deal with. We address issues as they come before us and we ventilate them in the public. So we have engaged probably 4 different supervisors of elections on these very issues. And they still remain unaddressed by the current supervisor of elections, despite having engaged with him, I think it was late November 2022, 2020 elections, November 2023, sorry. Those issues include that there is a missing computer from the system. There are allegations, there are all sorts of allegations surrounding whether that computer is being used or not used. There is no report in the People's Parliament on that issue. There is no report from the supervisor of elections on an issue that affects our fundamental democracy. And he's saying that he may, but when Parliament has to approve a vote to purchase a new registration system that costs in excess of $7 million, Parliament must vote on it. They can only vote on a report that comes from the supervisor of elections. The supervisor of elections is an independent office. So how else does Parliament approve a $7 million plus budget without a report, without debating it in front of the people? So there's serious issues. The issue of the replacement of the registration card in 2020. We challenged that because there was no law in the Representation of the People's Act that authorized that replacement in the manner that it was done. There was no enumeration. There was no cleansing of the list. You have an expired card that lasts for 10 years. At the ending of the expiry date, people have to come and redo. You may have left the constituency. You no longer reside in the Northwest, and you've moved to St. Patrick's. All of those things supposed to be regularized. That has not been done. But we were just replaced, given new registration cards. And those are the questions that we've been asking our supervisor of elections. What is the influence of the citizenship by investment program? Can people who have purchased their citizenship, now separate and distinct from Commonwealth citizens, can they also participate in the elections in Grenada? And how does the law in sections 10 that speaks to a Grenadian citizen How can we differentiate between a Grenadian citizen and one who has purchased his citizenship from the CBI? There were allegations of online registering. M.gov website, we identified the website. We have given the information to the supervisor of elections. There's no report. To date,
when were those allegations advanced?
Those allegations were 2020.
That was in the lead up to the 2022 election. So 2021
lead up to the
allegations of
2022
online.
election.
Okay,
online registration. To date, 5 years plus has passed, and we cannot get a comment on that from our supervisor of elections. The OAS, the last 2022 elections, the OAS and the data observer mission came to Grenada. The report is not available to the public. Why is it being withheld? Those reports are normally you get them 2 months, 3 months after the election. We cannot get a report. And we have written and we have met with him, and he is simply of the opinion that he may, the Constitution says that he may table a report. But how do you engage the Parliament to approve an allocation, a vote, without a report? You have to report. If you're begging for a new system, it has to go to Parliament. It must be debated. So those are the issues that we want to bring to the table. What is happening here? We all have elections fever, so we're looking at who can vote and who cannot vote. But there are other bigger systemic issues that the constitutional reform folks like yourself and Cassandra that have been raising outside of the remit of elections. So this is not because you're doing that now, because elections are close. That's and we do not. I want to emphasize, we do not cherry pick issues.
I mean, it should not be a case of cherry picking issues at all.
It should not be a case of cherry picking issues.
Yes. Yes. Dr. Alexis, I do remember vividly, sir, your nickname. I don't know if people still call you Workhouse. Do they still call you Workhouse? I think that was the other famous nickname. They call Dr. Mitchell Stone. But Dr. Alexis, before I get to you for closing comments, where did the name Workhouse come from?
I inherited it from my father, who, after Hurricane Janet, reinstated water supply across the country. Or where I sit here now, you can look up at Queen's Park, the village. He opened that village by cutting a road with his bare hands. For all these things, he was given a merit called the British Empire Medal. And that name came along from him to his 4 sons, of whom I am the last. So that's why they call us Workhouse, undeservedly. I don't work so hard.
Undeservedly? I think it's deservedly, sir. But you
Dr.
said you're
we are trying to find the juice that you drink. We're trying to find that juice because, we struggle to keep up with you.
I don't work so hard.
But you said, just quickly, Dr. Alexis, because I think people like yourself, whenever we have these conversations, it's narrowly defined in the context of the topics which it should be. But I think people like yourself are such, you're bereft of so much history, and you're such an institutional pillar, not only in Grenada but in the OECS, in the Caribbean, and the Commonwealth. Yes. You said that the road that you're referencing, was it the Dabo Road?
Yes, that's
well, you call it the Queen's Park Village, but okay, but it was called the Queen's Park Village before.
I remember that Carl Bristol always protested that road should be named John Everest Alexis Workhouse Road. Publicly used to, but it was never done. But people who know.
Well, now my audience knows, and the people of Grenada knows that where that name Workhouse comes from.
I used to leave GBSS and go and help my father cut canes the whole of that Creighton establishment over Andal. We grew canes there. So in the cane season, I would leave school and go and help him cut canes. He was an extraordinary worker. That's why I say I'm not worthy to unlatch his shoes when it comes to working.
And you finally, you're also a musician. You also play not the flute, is it? Not the flute.
You need to get your facts right. I used to be the Calypso King at the university.
You were a Calypso King, Dr. Alexis? I
think I'm the undisputed exponent of the harmonica in Grenada.
The harmonica, that's the instrument, the harmonica. I saw you play it at a funeral in St. Paul's. Yeah. But Dr. Alexis, we have to have you back for a human interest-centered conversation, a more personal side of Dr. Alexis. I enjoyed doing that with the late George Brizan of blessed memory. But let's get to you, Dr. Alexis, for closing comments. Thanks for your indulgence.
Some of the points which Mr. Ned is raising about the supervisor not submitting a report, for example, and the report of the observer team not being made public. These are scandals, really. So nothing less than scandals. These reports ought to be made available to the public.
Yes.
But within my narrow remit, 2 points. One, the matter of somebody getting onto the register is that a person ought not to be blocked from getting onto the register unless the supervisor of elections in his or our own deliberate, informed disposition is properly satisfied. And I gave you the authority for that from the CCJ, Ventos, and the Chief Electoral Officer. Similarly, once a person is on the register, the law gives that person what it calls the right to remain registered. These are the words from the Act itself, not my words. To get a person off the register, you have to come within the remit of Section 10. And the sticking point here is essentially whether a person ceased to be ordinarily resident in Grenada for a period exceeding 5 years, being a citizen of Grenada. And the jurisprudence, the law teaches us that just because a person might not physically have been in Grenada for the last 5 years does not necessarily prove that the person ceased to be ordinarily resident, because rarely, so to speak, a person can have more than one ordinary residence, putting it that way. And we give you the authority for that, Archibald and Jones, which King's Counsel Ruggles Ferguson is going to supply you with, so you can share to your viewers and listeners. I want to say again, it passes me quite that anybody can say you are providing too much public education on the question of the Constitution and the right to vote, who should be on the register or not. Caribbean peoples, Commonwealth peoples, for that matter, even in the United Kingdom, there was a time when, and Canada too, for that matter, America, there were times when women had no right to vote. And women had to lay down their lives to get the right to vote. So this is not a matter to be fed up with. On the contrary, we have to keep reminding ourselves that this is a precious jewel to be safeguarded with all alacrity. I want to thank you very much again, Dr. Bubb, for having me on your program.
Yes,
and
sir.
When you see that Mr. Ned and I were able to agree on even one point,
yes,
you know that your education program is going far.
Yes. In other words, I've done a good day's work, in the words of Sister Gabrielle of blessed memory. Yes.
I will give him his ice cream. I promise you.
Don't forget the cake. Don't
and
forget
I will
the
collect
cake.
it. You also gave me an A, and I value my A. I repeat it every time I get it. You get an A for you, so I want my ice cream. I go collect it.
Oh, Dr. Alexis taught you Mr. Ned in GBSS?
Of course.
I've
been not in GBSS. I've been a student of Dr. Alexis since 2018. 2016.
In that context, okay.
Everything I know about the Constitution, he taught me.
You credit him, yes, absolutely.
Everything that I know, credit him.
He's indeed a national treasure, indeed, Dr. Alexis. Indeed. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for appearing on this week's edition of the Bubb Report.
Thank you. Same to you.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Our viewers and listeners, that was a very that was class today. Yes, I thought it was important for us to have this very important conversation on understanding who qualifies as an elector, the right to vote, the entrenched provisions of the right to vote in the context of the Constitution, as well as what the Representation of the People's Act prescribes with respect to understanding that residency requirement, who is a Commonwealth citizen versus a Grenadian citizen, and all of that. And what we attempted to do here was to also historicize these contemporary conversations that has been happening for a long time with respect to who has been voting, who has not been voting. We have heard allegations, for example, that the opposition, that they allegedly, plane loads of folks were brought from certain places to facilitate voting for the opposition, which was then in government. You also heard allegations from she was in opposition at the time, but the current AG, not in a substantive role of AG. Again, allegations that Vincentians, but again, Vincentians are Commonwealth citizens. Vincentians could also be Grenadians who were voting in Carrick, who were, not voting, we don't know whether they voted or not, but who registered in Carrick and Petit Martinique to vote in that constituency there. And those were her concerns back in 2018. So these issues have now taken on, if you will, shall we say, a decidedly partisan turn. But one thing is clear, the Constitution of Grenada is neither partisan nor political. And so we should be guided and must be guided by the letter and the spirit as what obtains in the Constitution. I just want to make one final point. Normally, the folks like Mr. Ned and Cassandra Mitchell and so on, they've always had public fora with respect to Sandra Ferguson as well, have always had public education fora around voting rights, etc. The late George Grant ably facilitated those as well. So this idea that, people are fed up, or these conversations are very important, because sometimes I think we take this right to vote for granted. And these are conversations that must be continued to had in every respect of it all. But just before we go, folks, over on YouTube, we have right now, let's see how many likes we have. We only have 36 people liking the stream. Please, just if we can get more likes to the remaining folks, we have 447 people there still. If you can just hit that like button before the program ends today. And we'll just take some final quick comments. Miracle Child is saying, yes, Dr. Bubb, it was class and I sat at the front. So that's good. That's good. It was class and I sat at the front. Cadella is saying, thank you again for another edition of a well-structured debate. These edification are needed and should be ongoing. And then somebody saying here about Workhouse, Dr. Alexis's father, John Alexis. My mother told me that he was a great guy. He would come to her shop for credit and left hurriedly for Manjaloo. Very interesting comment there for Dr. Alexis there. Let's go. Dave Ned is saying every law passed by a parliament, including prescription for residency, are subject to the provisions of the Constitution. Anthony Samuel, is Sandra Ferguson well? I believe she's alive. I'm not sure if you watched MTV recently, but Sandra Ferguson made an appearance on MTV, I believe, a few weeks ago. So because you don't see her, it doesn't mean that she's not alive. She's alive. She has made an appearance on MTV, and she also raised some pertinent concerns around voting that I was not able to address with the supervisor of elections, but on a subsequent appearance, I'm hoping to. There's also the question of, perhaps Citizen Rule is listening, the question of citizens who are visually impaired and their right to voting. We did not get to that with the supervisor of elections, but that is an issue that I put on his radar for a follow-up conversation. Cassandra is saying George Grant would have been proud. Yes, indeed, Cassandra, I believe that wholeheartedly. May he continue to rest in peace and power. Mary Charles is saying, good discussion, a bit confusing at times, but many valid points raised. We also have a pollster here, Dr. Justin Pear. Amazing as always, the Caribbean's best Sunday morning program. Well, you're very kind, sir. I don't subscribe to the idea that I'm the best of anything, but again, accolades from whoever wants to give the accolades, that's on you. I'm a very humble person, so I just try to give public education where I can. So Valerie Thompson is saying, please have another session with the elections process and the PEO. Yes, we will indeed have another session with the supervisor of election. That is the intention here. And let's go on here. We have Leonora Isaac. Thank you, Dr. Bubb. Well-needed education for all. Yes, absolutely. I hope this clears up a lot of the conversations that we were having, which was really not grounded in the act at all. Joanne Brathwaite Batson is saying, another interesting and informative program. Dr. Bubb and guests, thank you all. Danley Alexis, also good seeing you as well. Thank you for being here. And Judy Lewis, again, very educational session. Yes, again. So folks, viewers and listeners, thank you for your spirited participation on the Bubb Report this week. And sometimes I get frustrated because I think, we do so much work and a lot of groundwork to put this program together every week. And when people come and just try to dismiss what we do by saying, oh, a little tired or whatever the case might be, it really offends me because I know the amount of work that we put in to having this program. It's very intentional, very deliberate in respect of how we, and sometimes we don't all get it right. Sometimes I'm accused of being on one side or the other or whatever the case might be. But again, we really try. I'm not a perfect person. And certainly there would be times when the program does not necessarily make muster. But the point is, what we try to do is to strive for perfection while also not allowing good to be the enemy of excellence. So folks, thank you for appearing, for your participation this week, and we will see you next week for yet another installment of the Bubb Report. Take care, and we wish everyone a pleasant Sunday. Bye-bye. Hi, everyone. The Bubb Report is committed to being fearless, balanced, and independent, bringing you the stories that matter most without compromise. Now do us a favor. Remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell so you never miss an update. You can also watch us on GBN TV every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Catch us on WPG10 television every Sunday at 8 p.m. Your support helps us to keep journalism free from bias and influence. And together, we can make sure every voice is heard and every fact is verified. Thanks for watching.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797 That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me have a much more than diplomatic passport. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just keep quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not too sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bubb Report. We go there.